So we have a full moon on Wednesday, Pacific time. Wednesday during the day, so it's about like 12, a little after noon on Wednesday, Pacific time. Not Wednesday, Thursday. What is today? Tuesday, Thursday. It's on Thursday. It's on Thursday, kids. It's on Thursday. So it'll be Thursday night for some of you, and you can adjust timings accordingly. Irrespective, there's going to be a separate video on the full moon. But as we were heading towards the full moon, one of the key astrological transits for 2021, and one of the key astrological transits that is going to be imprinting this full moon, and indeed the next new moon on February 11th, is the Saturn-Uranus square. Now, the Saturn-Uranus square is the big transit for 2021. We have it first time on February the 14th, we have it again in June, then we have it in November. We have it 3 times. And I referred to it and talked about the Aquarius Taurus squares: Jupiter, Saturn in Aquarius, Mars, Uranus in Taurus in previous videos, but I have not so far been satisfied with. And more importantly, I don't know that I fully understood or gotten what the Saturn-Uranus square is about. And I finally had my clarity and epiphany, and I thought, before we go further, let's talk about this particular square and this particular transit. Because on the face of it, Saturn is the stronger planet. It is in Aquarius, a sign that it rules. Uranus is in Taurus, and it is weaker in Taurus. Mars is in Taurus, weaker in Taurus, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to first talk about the symbology as it applies to the transits and the signs, because that gives us a sense of what is going on globally, and then we'll break it down to how it might affect each of us individually. At the end of the day, here's the big news. Uranus is the planet that is going to win out. And I use terminology like win and lose because it's a square. The planets in Aquarius are squaring at a 90-degree angle the planets in Taurus. And squares, as I've described you, is an interlock or a face-off of energies. Face-off is not the right word. It's an interlocking set of energies that you need to transcend, solve a problem. You kind of need to forcibly break through. You need to make some sort of a quantum leap or some sort of a leap of understanding, a leap in the way you are acting, a leap in the way you are behaving, and therefore, of course, thinking and processing information in order to break through the restriction of a square for it to fulfill its purpose. And this square is too important to ignore. It cannot be ignored. And squares, as much as they create a kind of lock of energy or cause delays or blocks or hurdles or obstacles, ultimately can create a great deal of progress, even more progress than trines, which are the favorable energy, favorable transit that we'll often refer to in Western astrology. So the reason why I say Uranus is going to win out is Uranus is going to be in Taurus for another 5 years. And the outer planets, the more outer you go, so after Jupiter, we have Saturn, then we have Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. The more outer you go, the more, in some respects, powerful the planets become, because they take on a fated quality that we cannot really argue with. We're at the mercy of those planets. We're at the mercy of those the changes and the transitions they effect. We are at the, sorry about the helicopter, we have to adjust to them. With planets like Jupiter and Saturn, there's an interplay. There's a conversation between us and them. There's still a personal quality to those planets. With Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto and Chiron, it's, well, especially Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, and more so by the time you get to Pluto, there isn't much of a conversation. The planets come, they do. They act, they change you. They create fated or karmic changes. Uranus continues. Uranus has been in Taurus for a couple of years now. It's going to be there for another 5 years. And wherever Uranus goes, it liberates, it awakens. It basically makes you more authentic and independent in that part of the chart. It creates quantum leaps of events, behaviors, beliefs, behaviors, quantum events of actions that force you towards greater authenticity and independence. It's a planet that I really enjoy working with, even though it's always disruptive. But it is ultimately trying to connect you to what is right for you. And if you say, well, what is right for me? I would say, where's your north node? What sign is it in? What house is it in? chances are that is where Uranus is trying to take you based on wherever you are, wherever it is in your chart, wherever Taurus sits in your chart. The sign of Taurus is not really suited to Uranus, and it's not really suited to the planet Mars, which is in Taurus till the end of February. And that is because I refer to the sign of Taurus as lazy, and that's inaccurate. It's not correct. I would say that the word lazy might be used for a sign like Pisces, because the nature of Pisces is to somehow give up its grip on material reality, the game of life, the material game of life, by recognizing that it is not real. So where Pisces, the sign of Pisces, recognizes the BS for what it is and can lead or go into a kind of a more monastic, spiritual space, insofar as action and activity is all about us engaging in material reality, either through the pursuit of our ambitions or through protecting what we have or whatever it is. You could use the word lazy if you want to give it whatever connotation you want to give that word, maybe more for the sign of Pisces in that archetype, in the 12th house. Rest, isolation, seclusion, a certain kind of spiritual meditation, a letting go of ambition, a letting go of action. That is not the case with Taurus. Taurus is the bull, and Taurus is not, Taurus is a sign that might be slow to rouse, but it's not without its, Taurus just operates on its own time. It's slow and steady wins the race. It is the tortoise, not the hare. That analogy has been coming up a lot in my readings lately. It will keep moving. It will just do so at its own pace. It is not an archetype of, I'm going to bound out of bed at 6 o'clock in the morning and there's going to be no stopping me, and I'm going to climb 10 mountains in one day, and I'm going to race around and get this done, and I'm going to go after what I want. It is not Aries, the fiery, single-minded pursuit of something quickly, the instant gratification of a desire or a wish. And it is not Gemini, the execution of actions and activities through interaction and communication and gossip and talk and commuting and going here and going there and talking about this. And it's not that mental. Taurus is about doing protective and preservation work around the things that nurture and sustain you. It is a sign that's associated with nature, natural rhythms, food, a sense of abundance, greenery. I'm in a Taurian environment on some level. So, it's this idea of, if Aries is the baby being born and articulating its desire, Taurus is the baby saying, I want to eat, and I kind of want to enjoy getting used to the rhythm of life. Sleeping at a certain time, eating at a certain time, pooping at a certain time, really enjoying what I'm eating, really enjoying what I'm wearing, the finer things in life, mine, my possessions, my income, my abundance. And these two concepts of nature and income become important. And I would imagine that with Uranus in Taurus, for the past couple of years and for the next 5 years, awakening authenticity when it comes to taking care of our planet, producing our food, and managing monies and financial systems may all get some lightning strikes of further epiphanies and further awakening with regard to what we're doing and how we're preserving and earning and preserving and earning and harvesting and plowing and planting, but in a way that feels more sustainable, more natural, more in sync with natural cycles. Taurus is a sign in which the moon is exalted. It's one of the things we get right in astrology with regard to exalting the moon in Taurus, because nature's cycles, nature's rhythms, new moons, quarter moon, full moon, quarter moon, new moon, aligning with lunar cycles and lunations as opposed to sort of this kind of solar calendar thing we've got going on. Natural rhythms, food, plenty, etc. So Uranus, over the next 5 years and past couple of years, will win out. It will fulfill its function. It's not going to be quite as supported, quite as active, and quite as lightning striky in some ways as it was in Aries before, but it will fulfill its functions. We may not go as fast as Uranus wants us to go, but Uranus will get us there. We will probably approach it in a much more methodical, even methodical is not the right word, slow and steady, will not be rushed. I will get there. Don't mess with me. Don't mess with my rhythm. I wake up at 7 o'clock. I have my cup of tea. Then I brush my teeth. Then I work out. Then I do this. Then I do this. Then I eat lunch. Then I do this. Then I do this. Then I have tea and sandwiches. Then I do this. Then I do this. Then I have dinner. Then I do this. Then I have dessert. Then I do this. And at 10 o'clock, lights out, I go to sleep. Do not disturb this cycle for me, please. And if you do, I will banish you, and I will get to where it is that I want to get to while I enjoy all of the things around me that give me a sense of stability, and even to some extent, a sense of finery. Maybe in its excess, a sense of luxury. It can become a sign of holding on. Uranus is not going to allow for a lot of holding on. Uranus wants progress, it wants awakening, it wants inspiration, it wants epiphany, it wants quantum leaps of information. So that is what this Uranus and Taurus thing is about. I actually made a video on Uranus and Taurus. I'll put a link to it at the end of this. Saturn in Uranus temporarily is stronger because Saturn is strong in Aquarius. Saturn in Aquarius, sorry. And it's squaring Uranus. And Saturn in Aquarius, which we felt between the middle of March and the end of June of 2020 and is now in place, is very much about social equality and questioning what is in place, questioning conservative, hierarchical rules that can be questioned and need to be questioned and will be questioned under Saturn. Saturn will not let that go in Aquarius. So the idea of marches and protests, whichever side you sit on, but especially those that are leading towards equality, the idea of really questioning and eliminating behaviors and patterns and boundaries that we have individually and that we may have in other places, and constructing something over the next 2 years that can really have some solid foundations with Saturn Aquarius. It's a progressive placement. I have talked about Aquarius not being Pisces in other videos. It's not Age of Aquarius as in hair and no clothes and hippiness and embracing tenderness and compassion. It is much more rational. So the lens may be compassionate, but even Aquarius would be quick to get irritated with that word as an archetype, and it would move towards rational. What is right? What makes sense? Why should there not be equal rights for everyone, irrespective of gender orientation, ethnicity, race, etc., etc., etc.? Why should someone be treated like this? Why should this be allowed to happen? Why should this be happening? Why should anything that is hierarchical and structured gets questioned in a rational and scientific manner? And if it does not hold argumentative muster, it must be replaced. Saturn is very powerful and strong about that. Jupiter is in Aquarius this year, and Jupiter, wherever it goes, lights the sort of inaugural match, so to speak. Jupiter has already squared Mars and Uranus this year. We're done with that. Saturn squares Uranus for the first time on February the 14th, Valentine's Day, I think. Now, what is the purpose of this square then? Okay, we have a march towards social justice and equality, and we have a march towards epiphanies around taking care of our planets and following more natural cycles when it comes to abundance and harvesting and earning and managing our monies, in a certain sense. What we own, what we bring in, how we preserve it. And on the surface, both of these energies are partnering with each other. They are. The reason for the lock, because they're both progressive. They're both progressive transits. There's certain transits that are conservative by nature. Saturn in Capricorn since December 2017 till the end of 2020 for the most part. Much more repressive, much more by the rulebook, much more keen to conserve and preserve the status quo. And then Saturn Aquarius goes, why? What was I doing? What was I thinking during that time in Capricorn? None of this makes sense. We've got to make progress. Rational Saturnian progress. Okay. The bottom line is this. In order for Uranus to do its work in Taurus, it needs Saturn to do its work in Aquarius. We cannot... Uranus, the reason why these two planets are locked with each other and require the breaks that they require this year, in the obstacles and the face-offs and the stuckness that they're going to produce that require those epiphanies of growth is because we need to make progress in a Saturn and Aquarius way in 2021 and 2022, especially in 2021. We have to inaugurate this and we have to keep going in order for Uranus to create the epiphanies, to create the growth, to introduce the sustainability, to make the quantum leap of changes over the next 5 years when it comes to us preserving our planet. And whatever changes Uranus is going to try and implement from a financial perspective when it comes to perhaps things like income distribution might become topics that become more and more insistent and require to be looked at in ways that are really much more rational. Uranus may create epiphanies, but it's still operating in a mental sphere. Uranus, Saturn, Aquarius, Mercury, these are the sign of Aquarius, these are all mercurial, these are all our mind making sense of things and understanding things and growing our understanding of things and questioning ourselves. In order for Uranus to do its... Now, what this means and where this becomes even more interesting. So, publicly, socially, politically, Uranus cannot continue to move forward in Taurus effectively until Saturn comes in and helps make certain changes in Aquarius. So certain marches towards certain questioning, certain rational questioning and tearing down of assumptions when it comes to issues of social equality, and indeed anything that benefits the collective, is required step in step with Uranus over the next 2 years as Uranus tries to create a certain amount of greening. Uranus can move 2 degrees and it's going to have to wait for Saturn to kind of move around those few degrees to kind of create its own. Neither planet can move forward entirely freely without... Neither planet can ignore the other, and it has to walk lockstep with the other planet. And it's a little bit like playing that game where you're tied to another person and you both have to hop to a certain destination. So Saturn and Uranus, Saturn in Aquarius, Uranus in Taurus are kind of having to do that. The other reason why these 2 planets that are challenging each other are surprisingly in sync with where they're trying to go is because Uranus is the co-ruler of Aquarius. So there's a lot of synergy between what these planets are trying to accomplish. They just can't move forward without waiting for the... So if it's Uranus saying, I need to make these 2 steps, I'm waiting on you, Saturn. When are you going to take those 2 steps? Saturn says, I've taken those 2 steps. Uranus says, I'm going retrograde. Saturn says, I'm going all year. Who are we? What are we questioning? What are we building towards sustainability, income distribution and preservation, and generation, and social equality, and things that benefit the collective scientifically. Medicine, vaccinations, scientific improvements. I understand that there are lots of perspectives, and I, for one, being who I am, don't hold science higher than faith. That's me. That's me. I don't dismiss science, and if it's a question of life or death, I will take the antibiotic, I will take the vaccination. So I will, but at the same time, I don't entirely buy the idea that science knows everything, and that there isn't more to discover, and that there isn't more to improve. For me, science and knowledge are constant improvements, and it's a kind of a dangerous place to be, to say, I give all of my independence over to either faith or an astrology video or God or science. So it becomes a question of how do you make choices for yourselves. And the needle now is certainly turning more towards what is measurable improvement. Is this going to help? Is this going to solve? And if it is, and if this is where we are at scientifically, then let's move towards implementing something that is going to create the improvements, even if it isn't perfect, and even if some of us are in a space of questioning a little bit. Okay. Now, where this becomes really interesting is in our own personal charts, and specifically, what this means is that if you know where Taurus sits in your chart, what house it occupies, what that house stands for, then that part of the chart is getting an independent boost, and you are being liberated in that part of the chart and being asked to ascend, asked to awaken, asked to do things in a more independent, authentic, seemingly to others rebellious way, but one that is true to you and true to your North Node placements. This has been going on for 2 years, will continue for another 5 years. However, friends, you're not going to be able to make progress without solving what you need to solve where Uranus sits, where Aquarius sits in your chart. Okay? So for the next 2 years, for this year, Jupiter there is going to end a 12-year cycle and start a 12-year cycle, 12 to 13-year cycle. Jupiter ends a 12-year cycle, starts a 12-year cycle in Aquarius, lights the match, creates the ending, creates the auspicious beginning. And sometimes it's an ending that creates the auspicious beginning. And Saturn this year and next year encourages you, not just encourages you, asks you, demands that you make responsible choices, which involves looking at your behaviors and patterns that are no longer serving you, but that you've been dealing with without consciously thinking about how they're not serving you, and now Saturn is going to put that right in front of you. It could be a series of tests that Saturn gives you. It could be a repeated sense of events coming through the same event but with different people and in different locations so that you can learn the lessons you're required to learn over the next 2 years. Where Aquarius sits in your chart, what house it occupies, what that house stands for. There's a lot of that's going to be going on this year and next year. And the bottom line is that that your chart needs you to make good choices. Make responsible choices. Do the strict teacher disciplinarian work that Saturn is going to ask you to do wherever Aquarius sits in your chart, what house it occupies and how you need to go about it. Pass those tests, eliminate those behaviors and patterns that are holding you back, even though they're challenging and difficult to change, as they always are, and move towards a healthier, stronger foundation, more permanent, strong, healthy, responsible foundation where Aquarius sits through this Aquarian rational lens. It's not about the conservative. So if Aquarius occupies your 7th house of marriage partners, it may be something less traditional. It could be, forgive me if I'm shocking someone, it could be multiple partners. It could be more of a friendship as opposed to a marriage. Whatever that right thing is for you, whatever that right rational thing is for you, however unusual it might be conventionally. Okay? That doesn't mean that everyone has to go about choosing multiple partners. So just the lens, the more important lens is the rational lens that questions everything and doesn't just take something on word or faith or convention or what is real, what makes sense, what can be supported by scientific argument, wherever it is that Aquarius sits in your chart. It's a colder energy. Aquarius is a cold sign. It's not a warm Piscean sign. Like everyone says, oh, it's the age of Aquarius, and I'm just like, I'm not going to touch that with a 10-foot pole. So irrespective, bottom line is solving and creating a strong foundation and making choices that allow you to fulfill your fullest potential in the part of your chart where Aquarius sits is what is going to allow Uranus over the next 5 years to do what it is trying to do in the part of the chart where Taurus sits. And there may be this year and next year, this year especially, a kind of mutual together moving up, down, wherever Taurus sits and wherever Aquarius sits as they solve through this issue. Wherever Saturn is in Aquarius, really by the time Saturn is ready to leave at the end of next year, 2022, is when a significant amount of that foundation will be laid. That, ladies and gentlemen, is what I am happy to say is my word on the Saturn-Uranus square. It feels right to me. It makes total sense to me. I've been trying to solve it. I've been trying to understand why it is that these squares are happening when the energies are really fundamentally, thematically, in sync with each other, and that there's this kind of weird reception between these two planets going on because the sign of Aquarius is favorable both for Saturn and Uranus, and yet there's a square between these planets, and now you have it. If you like this video, found it useful, share the thing. Share the video, like it, comment on it. Likes and comments give it more circulation on YouTube. My contact information is going to be in the description area below. You can contact me to inquire about rates for readings, or if you want me to make an easy-to-read version of your chart that will tell you which sign is in which house and what house that stands for. Do not send me your personal information like your birth date, birth time, or location until you inquire about rates and you really want to move forward, okay? Next video is going to be on the full moon in Leo, which is a fiery, tumultuous, argumentative, conflicty full moon. So I'm going to leave that here, because over the next 48 to 72 hours, the energy is going to be quite combative, and it's going to lead us to the Mercury retrograde in Aquarius on January the 30th, and Venus entering Aquarius on February the 1st. So all of that to follow. Thank you for making it to the end of this video. Bye.